Good morning, everybody. Okay, we can do better than that. Good morning, everybody. There we go. Good job. Good job. My name's Jerry Dannemiller. I'm Chief Marketing Officer here at the Ohio History Connection. It's wonderful to see all your faces this morning for this excellent talk that I'm sure we're in store for in a couple of minutes. I just want to, if you're not too familiar with the Ohio History Connection, I'll give you the quick rundown. We are the state's official history partner, and that means many things. That means there are, in addition to the Ohio History Center, where we are right now, which, by the way, was just placed a week ago on the National Historic Records of Buildings, so yay us. In addition to this place, we have over 50 sites around the state. So go in any direction around the state, and one of those sites are ours, where I have to put a plug in for our membership folks. You can become a member today and get into all those places free of charge. So right is on your way out today, right, Truda? Truda's the person to see right over in the corner here. Anyway. We are the state's official history partner. We have over 50 sites. We are the archives and collections caretaker for the state. And we are the state's historic preservation office as well. And there's one thing that if I do my job correctly, I want you to leave here with one thing today, and that is, how many people have heard, and I've said this before, so maybe you've heard the spiel before, so you'll get the answer right. But how many people have heard of the phrase World Heritage? Yay. Okay, good. There are UNESCO, which is a wing of the United Nations. UNESCO inscribes there are 1,100 World Heritage sites around the world. So think of places like Stonehenge, the Great Wall of China, things like that, whether they are natural or man-made places of significant value to humanity. And so there are 24 in the United States. There are 0 in Ohio until, drumroll, hopefully in September, the UNESCO committee meets in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks has been nominated to that list. We've been working on that nomination for going on 10 years now. But the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks are 2,000-year-old Native American earthworks, 2 in Newark, 5 down in Chillicothe, 1 over in Lebanon, Fort Ancient. And those 8 together make up a bit of a trail, and those are the Hopewell Ceremonial Earthworks. Those are an inch away from being inscribed onto the World Heritage List. This is a huge deal when we think about it. It's a point of pride for Ohioans. It's an economic development aspect when you think of things like the Bourbon Trail. I was just talking to my buddy Eric about the Bourbon Trail. Not that it's the Bourbon Trail, but think about it that way. You know, from Fort Ancient up to Newark, you could, if we build that out with biking, recreation, tourism, hotels all along the way. So this is a big, big deal. We've been spearheading this nomination with the National Park Service, and we're an inch away. And hopefully you'll hear some good news from us come September. But we're really, as if you can't tell already, we're really excited about it here at the Ohio History Connection. And we just want to welcome you here and hope you have a great morning. It's my distinct honor to introduce the legend, yeah, Mr. Don DePero, President and CEO of the Columber Chamber. Everybody.
Jerry, that was amazing. The only problem with that is I think you got to be old to be a legend, which actually is not inaccurate. So thank you and congratulations, Jerry. That's great. We can make this new designation the Ohio Bourbon Trail. and we'll sign up for that. That's great. I want to start by saying, Colleen will be up here momentarily, and I always introduce Colleen Marshall, and I'm not introducing her. We're going to, Colleen is the preeminent broadcast journalist we have here in Central Ohio. She's amazing, and you think of all the newscasts that she leads at NBC4, and what an amazing job she does. And now she has another title to add to her long, distinguished resume, and that's Woman of Achievement. Also in our audience, now I hate when I start doing this because I don't want to leave anyone out, but one of her mates this year as one of our YWCA Women of Achievement is Marilyn Brown, who's with us. Marilyn, wave to us right here in front. And Francie Henry from Fifth Third, who Colleen's going to be interviewing, was a Woman of Achievement 3 years ago. So congratulations to all three of them. Welcome to the Columbus Chamber of Commerce's CEO Insights series. We're thrilled to have you here. We're thrilled to see all of you. Thanks very much for joining us. And a special thank you to our 2023 CEO Insights partners. You'll hear more about them as we move on. We appreciate your continued support of these phenomenal conversations. So to begin this morning's program, I'd like to introduce our friend Keith Martinez. Keith is the managing partner for the Columbus office of Plant Moran. Since it's after April 15th, Keith has a much bigger smile on his face.
Thank you, Don. Appreciate it. Good morning, and welcome to the Columbus Chamber of Commerce CEO Insights series. I am Keith Martinez, managing partner of the Columbus office at Plant Moran, and we've been a long-standing partner of the CEO Insights series. Plant Moran is a full-service CPA and business advisory firm. Locally, we're providing assurance, tax, wealth management, and several other consulting services. We're continuing to prepare for more growth, and we're excited to bring in our largest intern class ever this summer. We're bringing in 24 interns. So if you don't see me in July and August, I will be training interns. So we're super excited about that. We're also very thrilled, and some of my colleagues are here with me today. We're thrilled to welcome Francie Henry, Regional President of Fifth Third Bank of Central Ohio, to our stage here at the Ohio History Connection. Just as a reminder, we will pick 10 random coffee registrants from today's program to present Crimson Cup coffee and tea gift cards at the end of the program. So thank you to Greg and his team at Crimson Cup for this generous gift. Be sure to stick around for our closing comments from Katrina Thompson this morning, as she will announce today's winners. I'd now like to welcome Jennifer Griffith, Regional President of First Merchants Bank, to introduce Francie Henry. Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. I'm going to find my part of the script here. Sorry about that. So good morning, everyone. It's fantastic to be here. Like Keith said, my name is Jennifer Griffith. I'm the Regional President of First Merchants Bank. I also have been in the industry for about 30 years, and I am so honored to spend the morning today listening to Francie's story. She's an absolutely amazing, intelligent, bright, fantastic woman. And when I think about the way that the banking industry comes together in Columbus, Ohio, I couldn't be more proud. It's incredibly collaborative. We have fantastic partnerships. We share in combined assets. We share in thought leadership. We do great work together at the Ohio Bankers League. And there are a ton of bankers that are in the audience today that are not just mine, but others that serve in our industry. And I'm really proud of the Columbus Chamber to honor such a fantastic leader as Francie Henry. Over the years, we've had the honor of hearing from many unique and inspiring stories from leaders that are across our community. And today continues with nothing different, Francie Henry. She serves as the regional president of Fifth Third Bank. She is responsible for the growth and the strategic direction of the bank's commercial, wealth and asset management, consumer businesses, while always delivering distinctive value to their customers and the community throughout Central Ohio, Southeast Ohio, West Virginia, Eastern Kentucky, and Western Pennsylvania. Francie has 30 years of banking experience and has spent her entire career at Fifth Third Bank. She's held many positions, including their market president, managing director of wealth and asset management, retail executive, regional bank mart manager, and their marketing coordinator. She earned her bachelor's degree in business administration from Miami University. How many Miami grads are out there today? Got to be a few. Francie is a member of the Columbus Partnership, the chair of the Finance Committee. She serves on the Ohio Bankers League Board of Directors, on the boards of the Columbus Club, the Ohio Foundation of Independent Colleges, Denison Edge Advisory Board at Denison University. She's on the Ohio State University Star Advisory Committee, SciTech Board. She's involved in the development of the Gene McCoy Community Center for the Arts in New Albany. She's the founding chair. And most recently, she joined the International Women's Forum. Francie is a member of the Greek Orthodox Cathedral and has the Jim and Francie Henry Family Fund at the Columbus Foundation to help facilitate her family's philanthropy. Francie is a 2020 YWCA Women of Achievement honoree. She's a 4-time Most Admired Executive from Columbus Business First, from 2019 through to 2022. The Power 100 in 2020. In 2021, received a 2018 Ohio Diversity Award for Leadership Excellence and a 2017 Women Welding the Way Calendar honoree. She's an amazing, fantastic leader in our community. Please enjoy the morning as I welcome Francie and Colleen to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. We've been back there gossiping, and at one point I said, I really hope my microphone doesn't come on. This would not be good.
Look, before we get started, Colleen, I read a little about you, and I want to make sure that you have the appropriate energy. Did anybody read the article about Colleen? That she has gummy bears in her... So only softball questions today, and make sure that you're well-nourished.
This will be dinner tonight, so it's like we've been to dinner now.
I know, it's kind of nice.
We are very happy that you're here and ready to welcome some questions. And somebody told me the last time that I was too hard on the guy from the zoo.
Tom's here. Was it Tom?
So,
He's
yeah.
here. Tom's
Is
here.
Tom here? I wasn't that hard on you, was I, Tom? See, he was fine.
Tom's a great partner. Great partner and great CEO. Columbus is lucky to have someone like Tom.
Yes, Tom. I actually heard great things about that interview and what you've done at the zoo.
How about a round of applause for Tom and the zoo?
But I want to start out with, for you, I'll start out with kind of a softball.
Perfect.
It still is unusual for a woman to be a CEO in the banking industry. Yeah. So when you, tell me about when you started out and how welcoming the industry was to you in particular, but women in general back then.
Well, you know, it's funny, I say maybe my Greek heritage has something to do with being very comfortable in a situation where I'm one of very few individuals. So I grew up in Mount Vernon, Ohio. My parents immigrated here from Greece. And that's, you know, less than 1% of the population spoke a language other than Greek. And that's all we spoke is Greek. So I'm very comfortable in situations where I'm one of very few. And I also think a little bit of the heritage and culture allows me the opportunity to say, I'll like to defy all odds. But I never felt like it was a disadvantage to me. So maybe, you know, my memory does not recall all the things that, you know, I had to withstand or overcome. But a couple things. One, you know, I started as a CSR, a teller, in the summers at First Federal Savings and Loan. And, you know, there were just, women ran the bank then. The managers were the men, but we ran the bank. It's like the Greek, the neck that can turn the head any way she wants, you know, so we kind of ruled the roost. In the management training program, there weren't that many women. We talked a little bit about this, but the women at the bank then were very supportive of other women. I mean, they laid a foundation that said, look, there ain't a bunch of us here, so we got to take care of one another. And I hope that others would say I've maintained that philosophy, if not more so.
But the industry itself back then, and I'm a little older than you, I got married in '79, and I remember the surprise that I had even then that I could not get a credit card unless my husband signed for it. So it wasn't exactly as if the financial industry had a lot of trust in women.
Yeah.
Because they didn't trust their women clients back then. Did you ever have that sense that you were maybe, rising the ranks, but you were always viewed as the woman who's rising the ranks?
Yeah, I think to some degree, but I mean, I always tried to figure out what's the rule? What are the rules of engagement here? And it always starts with me with like culture and foundation and the feeling that I really believe in what this organization's doing, number one. If I didn't feel like we had the right spirit and the right energy and the right core values, it wouldn't have lasted for me. And I think our organization generally has this feeling and sense of inclusivity, whether it's for our customers, our communities, or our employees. That was never in doubt. Then, your job then becomes to continue to allow more people in the tent. And as one in the tent, if you left, who the hell else was going to do that for? Everybody else that looks or acts or feels like me. And I was supported in that regard, but I always felt like every position that I got, if I was one of very few women, and I started on the consumer side of the business, Colleen, so there were more women in the retail branch system than I'd say in the corporate bank. But when you know, physically, subliminally, or otherwise, that you are one of a few, you feel the burden. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't let that burden outweigh my ability and my focus on what was right, and kept my head down. But I always knew, like, you get messages from women in the organization who say, we're cheering for you, we're rooting for you, you're one of only a few. And it wasn't always because I was a female. In our industry, as you grow up in the ranks, the consumer business, again, you'll see women who are heading up HR and marketing and the support functions. But when you move into more of the wholesale bank, the commercial and the private bank, there weren't many women there. And I always felt the burden of representing my retail background, my heritage, my gender, but I never felt it to be something that was on my back as a weight, but something that I could lift and bring others along.
So tell me your background then. You started as a teller, and then you went into management training, which is which even then probably few women in there. But then how did you bounce up? I mean, how did you rise through the ranks to where you are right now?
And people think you always have this kind of well-charted out journey. So let me just say, I was graduating from Mount Vernon Senior High. Any Knox County, Mount Vernon people here? I was graduating from Mount Vernon Senior High my senior year, and I was going to go to Greece that summer, because that's what we did as Greeks. We'd take the summers, we'd go to Greece. Chernobyl happened. And my family decided that probably wasn't the right thing for me to do. Well, I was spirited, some have heard this story before, and had a lot of good friends. My dad owned a restaurant at the time, big breakfast, big lunch, smaller dinner. So I had to be at the restaurant at 7 o'clock in the morning. Well, that doesn't work out for you very well when you're out a little bit later that evening prior. So my mom and dad were having a little bit of a discussion, and there's knives in the kitchen, so those discussions can get pretty spirited. And one of our most loyal customers was the branch manager at First Federal Savings and Loan, Shirley Lamb. Shirley's gone. I've given her credit for where I am today. Shirley was always my dad's confidant. So I always kind of looked at Shirley as, like the ombudsman. She would help my dad just navigate things in business. So Shirley's like, Gus, what's the problem? And she said, Anastasia's going to kill me and Francie because, he was giving me a pass. My dad was always just kind and gentle and tried to hide the fact that I wasn't showing up. Long story short, she said, look, I need some summer help. And she said, if you go down and tell George Bumpus, if you go down and tell old man Bumpus, I've been trying to get a summer teller for years. You're a pretty good depositor. Why don't you run down? My dad threw that apron off, went racing across the street, sat in Bumpus's office, and much to all of our surprise and chagrin, I was a teller on Monday morning. And that kind of began and embarked on my career. So every summer during my college career, I would come back in the winters, I would come back on break. They would call me the kid, because by 25 years I was the youngest, right? They'd call up and say, hey kid, are you coming home this weekend? We're short on Saturdays, we need you. And I really enjoyed it. I graduated in the 80s. I graduated in 86. The financial services industry was doing pretty well, and we were hiring. So I ran around, interviewed with a bunch of banks and got hired by this little bank that had a funny name, Fifth Third. We were $3 billion at the time. The funny thing was that I wanted to come to Columbus. Again, Greek immigrant family, they wanted you to be nearby. And I interviewed with every bank around the square and got a ding letter from every single one of them. I mean, a no, flat out no. And I got a great offer from this little bank with a funny name, and I said, I'll start there. And I promised my dad that I'd come back at some point. So I started the training program, and then what I didn't want to do is go back into retail banking. I said, you're a teller. We'll put you in the branches. I said, I just did that. I've done that for 4 or 5 years. Can I do something else? Fifth Third's program was the only one that said, you want to be in marketing and you want to try something else? What the hell? Give it a shot. We're like, really? Starting with them. And they allowed me to explore different areas of the bank and the organization. But I went back into the consumer bank for the first 16 years of my career, and I really enjoyed it. And probably the most enjoyable thing for me was in 1989, we started these little banks that we opened up in Kroger stores. We called them bank marts. And we only had about 2 or 3 of them.
And those were so unusual back then, weren't they?
Well, hello, unusual. So nobody wanted to run them. Nobody. So the guy who ran the consumer branch at the time, his name was Jim Gaunt. Gaunt was a big burly guy, and he'd come walking over to marketing, and he'd be like, I like you. I was like, what do you like about me? He said, you're different. I said, welcome to the club. I said, yeah. He said, I don't want a traditional banker running these things. I want somebody who has a little marketing, a little retail background, and a little flair. So I got a leadership position 3 years into my training at the bank, and we had 8 of these at the time, and we grew them to over 100. So I'm sitting around the table with very experienced consumer bankers, again, who were really good. There were 2 women, 5 men, and I think that really kind of jettisoned my ability not just to learn the consumer bank, to be a manager and a leader. So when the bank says, I kind of like this about you, what about trying something else? And my dad was suffering from the effects of dementia and Alzheimer's. I know we share it, we have a common bond there. And I'd promised him 16 years prior that I said, I promise you, Dad, I'll come back. I'll come back, I promise. And 16 years later to the day, when the head of retail job was open in Central Ohio, I went knocking on the head of retail's door, and I said, look, I'd like to go back to Columbus. And he looked at me, and I had done everything for this guy, right?
And where were you living at that time?
I was in Cincinnati.
Okay.
Kids were 3 and 5, so they were young enough. It was the right time, and Bob just passed away, and I was at his funeral talking to his wife and his kids, and he always go like this. Bob always looked at you like this. Kind of did this. He goes, let me think about it over the weekend. And I'm just like, think about it over the weekend? I've run bank marts, I've run West Side, I've run Central, and I've been, pretty good at all these things. Long story short, on Monday morning, I put a call into Bob Eversole. Anybody knows Bob Eversole? I put a call into Bob Eversole. He'll be calling you this afternoon. And I was able to come to Columbus, and 8 months after we moved the family here, my father passed. So I could fulfill that promise.
Yeah. Yeah, I know about those Alzheimer's promises.
Right.
They forget them the next day, though.
That's right.
Let's be honest.
Right. I bounced around here, so consumer to private bank to commercial to president.
So
that's the short
describe
story.
your management, your philosophy on how you manage people.
Is anybody going to check me on this, or can I just say it?
Well, I don't know. Are any of your employees here? This might be truth or dare.
I think I'm a very inclusive manager. And I heard somebody say this the other day. They said, people aren't stupid. If you hire the right people and cut them loose with a little bit of guidance, just let them do their thing. And I have always felt from a very young age that that's what the organization allowed me to do. I mean, I had no business at my age managing people and running ultimately 34 branches. I had no business. But there was always somebody there to help and guide you, Mm-hmm. So I think my philosophy around kind of the management is it's like hire the right people, point them in the right direction. So my other job would be just like people, process, and plan. I like to at least have a plan, and the plan would be like, that's the mountain. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know the rest of it, but that's the mountain. And what happens to most people in an organization is they go left to center, they go right to center, something, takes them off the original course. And your job really as a manager is just to kind of go, no, 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 just like the puppy, right back here, remember? We said that was the mountain. And then just help them with their process and how you can be helpful. My job isn't to do their job. What the hell I have them for? You know what I mean? I had this argument with one of the presidents the other day. You're supposed to be watching this. I said, well, what do I need them for if I'm supposed to be watching this? My job is to help lift their heads up and down from this so we can just kind of refocus and go. And here's the other thing. People want to work for people that are excited, are enthusiastic, and can paint this positive picture of the future, right? I say it's like a continuum. When you first start your career, it's all about building your IQ, right? But people make this mistake that they think all they got to do is just keep building their IQ and success will come. Women do that a lot, I think. Not always the case, right? You need to know and you have to be a lifelong learner. Okay, I get that. The next phase, though, is more EQ. It's like, how do I put the right teams together? How do we build, a high-performing and people who run DISC are a little different than each other, but can be helpful and supportive of each other. That's the other thing that I would say. We are one family. Now, if you want to argue and tear each other's eyes out in my office, fine, close the door, let's have it out. But when we walk out in front of the team that we're managing, it is one consensus and one family. But EQ, and I did a lot of training around emotional intelligence. It's probably the most important thing I really did for myself and, in managing and leading. And the last thing is called PQ. And most people don't know, it's a book that was written by Shirzad Shamin. PQ is positive intelligence. So kind of like, again, you want to walk in and your manager's like, oh, gee, the Pete's. Did you see the news this morning? SVB just went under. We're so screwed, But I'm not painting a picture that's unrealistic either. Oh, it's SVB went under, no big deal. Woo, good day today. But the point really is that if you have the energy, the enthusiasm, and you feel really good about what you're doing, other people they'll emulate that and they'll go. And part of that is staying in the same part of your brain that makes you feel good, because everybody's going to tell you what you're not doing right. Just ask yourself the question, how many meetings did you have last week that were trying to solve a problem? Meetings that you had because there was an issue, you're laughing. Meetings because something didn't go right. I learned during emotional intelligence training, it's called appreciative inquiry. If you really stay focused on what you're good at, you'll have results that are far better than continue to focus on something that you're really not good at. So think about it. You stink at something, Don. You really stink at this. I'm going to get 100% better. You stink less. Really?
That's why I delegate everything.
Delegate everything. If you're really good at something, no matter if it's a work, if you're really good at it and you focus on getting better at it, it's going to have results that will pay you a lot more dividends, in my humble estimation. Then, and I'm not saying turn a blind eye, then you can work on the other stuff that needs help. But when you start with the stuff that's yucky and not working, same thing with your mind, right? Same thing with who you are. And I think that's my job as teams to help create that energy around what's good.
Well, you touched on it, and I wanted to ask you about 2 bank collapses. We immediately heard financial experts telling us everything that went wrong. And there was a lot of finger pointing to management, especially with SVB.
Yeah.
So when you saw that happen, did the banking industry have a sense that this was on the way?
I would say I could speak for myself. So let's just start with SVB and we can leave it at that. SVB is a 40-year organization, institution that was really good at what they did. And they helped a lot of these new growing companies, financially. They helped their owners. And they're a great organization. We do a little work with Drive Capital and their portfolio companies. SVB was hard to unseat, and rightfully so. They had the model and the formula around that one specific industry, which eventually led, to one of the reasons why those deposits ran out as quickly as they did. I'll go back to saying, though, that managing the assets and liabilities of a company is number one priority for management. And when, their liquidity positions were not adequate to withstand, the market changes as quickly as they did, you'd have to say that, honestly was a failure of management.
And didn't management also start dumping their own stock a few days? I mean,
I heard that too.
Is that something that there should be consequences to?
Yeah, look, I think that will be decided by many others. In some cases, depending upon the shares that you own, those things have been disclosed prior to. We'll see, that'll be adjudicated. But what I'll say, Colleen, is in 12 to 18 hours, $42 billion ran out of that bank. $42 billion. It's the first run on the bank, where's my phone, that was created by the access to technology. And again, I'm not standing up here trying to say SVB, they're great people, but the circumstances that led to that thing and what we have realized as a result, I think a lot of us will learn from, but their clientele was so specific to what they did, and I think lended a little bit to that unfortunate circumstance.
But it also, to consumers, seeing the run on the bank, seeing the collapse, knowing that the stockholders were out, that the investors might be covered up to $250,000, but the investors in the stock were out. That had a lot of consumers worried and thinking, should I rethink having my money in a regional bank? Did it impact you? Did you see people? Were you getting phone calls from people who are saying, I'm a little worried about my assets?
Yeah, look, absolutely. To some degree, I think on the consumer side, so I spent some time that week out in the branches, and I just said, hey, what are you hearing? What are you feeling? And they said, generally, Francie, the customers that we knew would be concerned were here and we were talking to them about it. We tried to get ahead of it, Colleen. So, we tried to make sure that we reached out to clients. Consumer clients, most of our book of business, we're a big consumer bank. And the majority of those deposits are insured in our world. So the models were just so completely different. Others who may have needed a little help, whether it was titling or moving some things around, we did that. On the commercial side of the business, it's just very difficult to have accounts, when you're running a pretty good sized company that are less than $250,000. But when we looked at our deposit base, like 88% of that deposit base too had transactions accounts, had payment systems attached to it. So again, we just wanted to make sure that those were safeguarded in the right way. We've been fortunate that, although there have been, kind of the ins and the outs, our deposits remain relatively flat, which was a very good thing. But I think making sure that customers know that there are alternatives, that we are a safe haven, that model was very unique to the business proposition of SVB and just wasn't widespread. The hardest part for us was it became all regional banks. And it's just not the case. I mean, there were 2 failures, another third bank sold, and there might be a few others to see. I don't know that it's over yet, but the regional banks in general are very safe. They're managed well.
I wonder, as we look at what's going on with the debt ceiling, we all know that could be chaotic, that we could be a week or so away from financial chaos. If Janet Yellen is to be believed, and we've only got until June 1st. I see you shaking your head.
Did you hear him this morning? Did anybody hear him this morning?
No.
Well, we've decided that, somebody from the Biden administration now is going to, work with somebody in our area. How many times has the debt ceiling not been approved? Every time it comes. Has it ever? God, the shenanigans that go on. I swear to God, I have a $5 bill. Who thinks it's going to get passed? Don't waste the energy around it. It'll get passed.
But it does, and some of it is my industry.
No, you're right.
It does, because it's talked about and because we see the division and we see, Donald Trump saying, well, let it go into default. That'll teach them. And we know that he has the ear of Kevin McCarthy. So when we see that and we know that it could happen, it hasn't happened, but a lot of things that haven't happened before are happening right now.
I know.
And so should we be worried about it? And how does that impact regional banks?
Wow, I didn't know this was going to be a lesson in economics, you know what I mean?
Ask Tom, he'll tell you.
Look, I think the most concerning thing for anyone in this world today is just the discord and just our inability to just sit in a room and make sense of what needs to be made sense of. I'm not trying to demean the fact that if this debt ceiling isn't passed and our credit rating as a country goes down, there's going to be fallout here. There's going to be fallout for all industries, including the banking segment. I think calmer minds will prevail. I see Marilyn Brown kind of nodding her head here. She's worked in the political realm and knows more than I probably can, ever imagine. I can't imagine that that's not going to get settled at some point. But I also ask you, is it changing the way that you do business? This dialogue. Has it changed, the way that you want to make sure that you take care of your family, the way you save, your mortgage, the things that you're doing every day? Has it drastically changed the way you're running your company and what you're doing? And our job is just to focus on the things that we can control and stay, it's that mountain again, right? We could get distraction if it happens. Let's come up with a contingency plan if it does to see how it affects you. But I just don't think, the normal consumers in the day-to-day and the business, we can't run the business on the what-ifs. We just have to stay focused on what's controllable.
You mentioned the way people do business. Regional banks kind of rely on small businesses in their areas. And what's your relationship, or what do you see your mission as your relationship with small businesses in the region? And your bank has grown a lot since you've been there, in size and scope and in the number of states that you're in. When you look at small business and your relationship with small business, how is it changing, especially depending on what region you're in?
Yeah, it's interesting. Good question. So when I started, the bank was $3 billion, and now we're 200 and call it 10 billion, and we're top 15 bank in the country. And we had an old CEO who I just saw last week, and he's still a piece of work. Hey, Fran. He said, bigger isn't always better. He said, you can eat cheeseburgers all day long if you like to get bigger. He's a piece of work, I'm telling you. George Schaefer. Who comes up with this stuff but George? He said, better's better. And I think the philosophy that we've always tried to maintain is, we are a large regional bank, but we try really hard to deliver our clients an experience that's like Jennifer does in her bank, that is very local and feels a lot more, like a small bank in your neighborhood. We do that by the strategy comes out of the main headquarters, but there are actually 16 of me, and it's a pretty expensive model to have someone like, don't tell them I said that, geez, I'll take a pay cut. But relatively speaking, it's an expensive model to say we want to deliver our products and services locally. So we all have a management team that has a president, a head of commercial, a head of wealth, head of marketing, head of retail. So my job is to make sure that I know those clients and they know me, because I still think it's a very personal business and that people still want to bank with people they know, like, and trust. I have an advisory board here, and there's a number of my advisory board members who are here, and they're there to help make sure that what I say I'm doing, what we want to be doing, gets delivered. So we have advisory board members at all 14 of these banks that really help take the big strategy and deliver it, in a very localized fashion. And that's why I love what I do, in that, my job is executing and staying in front of the clients. I still don't think they take me out on enough calls. I'm like, just take me out. They're like, yeah, don't take her out, Ed. Because I'm just like, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, I think we can do that. Rachel took me out yesterday. We were out at NetJets. Have you been out to NetJets?
Yeah, not lately, but I've been out there.
Holy smokes, people. That is unbelievable.
So
Okay, I'll call him about that, chamberman. 1,300 people. And we actually sat in the simulator and got a chance to fly. I flew the plane into New York. Rachel flew it into Washington, D.C. It was awesome. She did not have a good landing, though. We had to pull back up again, and she had to come back at it again. I landed perfectly. And that's, I give you this roundabout story to say, look, lots of banks have lots of different philosophies, and many of them are very good at what they do. But I think our strategy around just making sure that you stay very grounded in, what does your organization need? And we're all going to be a little different in these 14 markets. But the specificity around how your local economy is growing, what you need to do, how you need to get involved, we kind of bark that up the food chain, but it's our responsibility to make sure that it works there.
Is that my mic doing that? Did it stop?
Does that make sense?
Yeah. These are directional mics. It shouldn't be me. I'm sorry if that's annoying to people. That's better. Is that better? You are a regional bank.
Yes, ma'am.
So who are you when you look at this region? Who are you competing against? And is it a healthy competition, or is it you guys kind of nasty with each other?
Who said it's a good question? You want to answer, Shaquille?
That was a good question.
Let me just ponder my answer.
Oh, is somebody rolling on this?
Look, well, that's me. Should I sing now and dance? Now that look, there are really great banks in this region. So we're all very fortunate that we have.
There's good people on both sides.
Oh, we have really. If you think about, Huntington's the hometown bank here, and my humble opinion, and I've shared this with Steve and Sue and anybody else who wants to listen. I think you heard me say this too. They're a wonderful organization, and they have really set the stage, for us who have come in. Now we've been here over 25 years, 30 years here in this market, so didn't like we're newcomers, but good for HNB and what they're doing. We had the bank ones here that now are J.P. Morgan Chase. Now, who's going to say J.P. Morgan Chase not a great bank? PNC is a wonderful organization, and we have an inordinate amount of community banks here who are really good at what they do. They're really good at their different lanes, and they're really good at taking care of everybody else. So I have to be good, and I'd rather compete, with people who are very good, because that means that we'll get better. And we'll say this publicly, that I think when it comes to, if you look at any city that's thriving and growing, it has a very healthy financial services industry. So I'm going to take credit for what's happened over in this economy in the last 15 years. I mean, pick a city that isn't thriving and growing, and I can tell you there isn't, the financial institutions aren't as great. We have a very good insurance industry here. We have a good financial service industry here. We have a good education system here. We have a great healthcare. But I challenge you to find a city that's growing and thriving that doesn't have a great financial service industry that can help propel the economy and grow. And I think what we do a really good job of is, when it comes to the community, what needs to be done, and in unison what we need to do, we put all those swords down and we stack hands and lock arms, and we help in any way we can. It doesn't matter. Now, I am as competitive as anybody else, and I like to win. And I know where I rank, wherever my market share is, when I want it to be higher. And it's a healthy competition, though, right? It's a healthy competition. And look, I know when I get a client that chooses me over those other organizations, I know I've worked hard and I've earned it. No one comes to you because the other person isn't good. It takes a lot of work and energy. Bob White's here. There's a group of developers here in town. I mean, they're all really good at what they do. And think about the history around the developers in the city. It's their grandfathers, it's their fathers, and now this generation that's taking over. Our city is growing and thriving, and they all find their lane. They all have their purpose. Some is mixed use, some is industrial, some is whatever, but there's plenty for all of us. When you're in an economy like we have here, when the city is growing 1 million more people by 2050, there's enough for everybody to go out and go get. And maybe we're a little unique. I think our delivery model is unique. I think my people are better. You know, I better believe that. I think that we are really good at certain segments better than others, and I think our competition's better in certain segments. A lot of accounting firms. They're all magnificent. A lot of law firms. They're all fantastic. Everyone has their little nuance and difference. That's why you've got to have the plan to find your lane and to be the best possible version you can be in your lane and expand where you can to help offset. But we'll be the first ones to tell you if somebody says, I need X, Y, or Z, and we're not that great at it, the best thing we can do is say, you know what? My friend down the street probably does a little better job than me at that. And that client will come back. I'll end with saying that I think in our industry for the longest time, it was like, well, if I had the cheapest rate, I'd win the business. If I paid the highest deposit rate, I'd win the business. And it usually started with credit, right? If you don't give me my car loan or my mortgage loan or my company loan. Now it's really evolved because, you know, money is relatively plentiful. There's a lot of liquidity in the system, so it didn't matter. You know, the loan rates are, again, pricing is important, don't get me wrong, but it's value and being able to provide value to clients and staying true to understanding what's important to them. What we find with our business owners is they're so good at what they do, but their heads are so down in running the business. If we can just kind of keep their heads up and provide a thought stream around what's happening with their competitors, what we're seeing on the buying and the selling side of the business, how do we help you mitigate risk? Anything that I can provide them that they don't think about day in and day out and provide value will ultimately win the trust and then will ultimately win the business. My greatest thing to hear from a customer is, oh God, my bank's never even asked me this before, ever talked to me about this. And that's when you know you're doing the right thing.
We are seeing tremendous growth here. We are fortunate in Columbus to be, other parts of the state aren't seeing what we've been seeing here. And it's not just Intel, but that also puts a strain on the economy and a strain on the system. Housing is not keeping up. And there are some educational challenges we're seeing in a number of the school districts. We're seeing a lot of turnover in superintendents, for example, this year, not just Columbus. So as this growth comes, there are cracks in the system as well. So what are your challenges as the area grows rapidly, keeping pace with that?
Yeah, you know, part of, I think, what we're all responsible for is ensuring that we educate ourselves around these issues, first and foremost. So housing, you know, I agree with you, Colleen. And if I'm in one more meeting that I hear somebody saying housing is an issue, and they want to pick one thing that they believe is the issue, and that's what they're pounding their fist on the table around, it tells me that they're really not educated around all the nuances. I think we have, I drank the Kool-Aid around the Columbus way. I did. Some people like nays, shake their heads around it. I really do believe that our public-private partnership here will find a solution to the major issues that we have. I'd rather be on this side of economic development. The private sector has to play a role. The public sector has to play a role. And we have to capacity build around these things. And if our lane is to help, whether it's capital, whether it's bringing people to the table, whether it's helping, whatever that is, my job probably is less about what's your rate around these things, but my job would be to help use my clout and my position to assemble the right people. You know, like this whole debt ceiling thing, like stop the nonsense. Like just stop it. You know, the private sector has a unique capability, I think, to get people to sit in a room because, you know, if you got the checkbook at times, if you're coming to me for your help or your support or your campaign, then let's try to solve these issues. But they're so difficult and complex that I think we all have to stop saying, well, you know, it's just as simple as that, but stay with it, stay with it. Workforce. I think we just got a big accreditation from the federal government. Don and I were talking about this today, one of 5 cities that was recognized around workforce. So, what do we need to do to help, the 50 colleges, universities, the other organizations, that are doing such a wonderful job educating our youth and our, but the public school system is a problem here. Not for lack of the people who are working hard to fix it, but there's a lot of difficult circumstances here. What lane can we pick as the private sector that we can try to make a difference? Because I think when you're trying to solve the big problem and you're just up here in the clouds, so maybe there's a school that we can take on. You know, we have taken on the East Side neighborhood as something that it's a place-based strategy to help economic development. I can't solve all the problems, but if I can really help there, it's a $20 million commitment. It's around investment, it's around philanthropy, it's around lending, that I can at least say, let me use this as my pilot program to see if I can expand it and make it grow. You just have to start somewhere. I get what keeps me up at night is just the enormity and the magnitude of it, and I don't know where to start. I mean, I just don't know where to start, but I care enough to at least learn more about it and then just pick a lane that I think I can make a difference in. If we all did it, I shouldn't say this, but am I taping? I was at a breakfast the other day.
Just go ahead, just between us kids.
And I happened to be a member of the Columbus Partnership. And someone said, well, what's the partnership doing about housing? I said, what's the partnership doing? I said, what are you doing? Did you go to your local township or municipality? Are they talking about, density? Are you okay with an apartment building being built in your neighborhood? Because that's what we need. So take up a sword, get educated, start being part of the solution and the fix, because no one's going to go fix it for you. And if we want our children, I have a 25 and a 22-year-old, if we want our children to be able to come back here and be able to afford a house, then you better be part of the solution. You better educate yourself. I want to leave a legacy for my children in this community, in whatever period of time I get to be a leader, that we are not just the most prosperous, but that our prosperity is for all in this community. And it sounds hokey, but it starts with my desire and then my ability to get really educated around these things to see how I can bring the right people around the table. And I'm not blaming anybody for it, but sometimes you just got to use your clout to get people to sit down and talk about these things.
I have been talking to business leaders this past week, including Steve Stivers yesterday, about the August election and the reproductive rights that are going to be on the ballot possibly in November. And there are companies that have come forward, Procter & Gamble, Kroger, I believe Nationwide, saying this is wrong, what the State House is doing, and it's making it very difficult to recruit young people, and that we are losing young doctors. I've talked to young doctors who are saying, I'm not staying in Ohio, I don't want to deal with it. Are you concerned about it?
I am. I think that the things that are going on, that anything that stymie, precludes, and doesn't help grow the economy for Central Ohio, that would make people select moving and going somewhere else, is problematic. And I think some of the things that are occurring, a lot of them that are occurring, are of concern.
So what's not just your role, but what are our roles? You say you talk to somebody about what are you doing about it? What should we be doing about the stuff that bothers us? The housing, the economic, the general public. What should we be doing? Do you think that we're not?
I don't know that if it is that we're not, but you hear about these things and you just kind of move on and take care of your family and your own little segment of the world. And that's just normal. I mean, that's just what happens. But it's neighborhood associations, it's school districts, it's your township. Where in your part of the world can you make a difference? If you start there, then I think it'll grow from there. I'm not saying that everybody has to take up all those swords. I think if you're running a company, there's a little broader and larger responsibility that you have, because of virtue of the position that you have and your ability to bring others along. But I think everyone just has to ask themselves, ultimately, is there something that I can do to help somebody? Whether that's at my local church, at my local school, if I can improve the outcomes in any way, shape, or form, just just, Yvette McGee Brown is a very good friend of mine. And I love her laugh, by the way. It's infectious. And, she's seen a lot in her life, in the various positions that she has. And she's the one that when I get too high in the clouds, she'll pull you right back down and say, who is the one person that you helped today? What is the one organization that you got involved with and you made a difference? What is the one thing that you can do? And if everybody did that, I can't imagine that we aren't going to solve the ultimate big issues.
Yvette McGee Brown and I have a running joke about wearing Spanx. And when she was on the Supreme Court, I said, do you wear them under your robe? And she said, I wear them in the shower.
And she never leaves the house unless her face is, she's got her face on, she calls it. She looks perfect every time.
This is a dumb question, but where did the name Fifth Third come from?
I wished it had a sexier kind of a story behind it, right? But we know
name
it is a dumb name, but I love it, right? Because you think about it.
Yeah.
Like, look, here's the thing. If you don't like something, you remember it. If you love something, you remember it. If it's in the middle, you won't remember it. So I'm glad you think it's dumb, because you remember it.
I'm confused by it.
Yeah, so we draw our roots back to 1858, and it became an ultimate merger of the Fifth National Bank and the Third National Bank. And in 1908,
so it's not a fraction thing I have to try to figure out.
We're not on the corner of 5th and 3rd Street. We don't make 3 people do 5 people's jobs. Heard that one before, right? But it's kind of a merger and a union from the Bank of the Ohio Valley in 1858 that ultimately bought the Fifth National Bank and the Third National Bank. And our first CEO, Clem Binger, would say, and when we decided we'd call ourselves Fifth Third, it was during the temperance movement, so we couldn't be 3/5, because then that would create all kinds of issues or problems, so we went with Fifth Third.
You were talking about get involved and Yvette telling you, what have you done today? I know what it's like to have so many hours in the day and you're being pulled in 9 million different directions. So what have you done to be successful at managing that home-life balance that so many of us, men and women, find challenging?
Yeah, look, I think the best advice that I was ever given is, when the kids were little, I'd get all worked up, and I told you how old they are now, but I'd get worked up if they didn't have their vegetables and their fruit and their whatever they're supposed to have each day. And then a friend of mine once said, maybe you should look at it over the course of a week, or maybe just give yourself some grace and look at this over a course of a period of time. And so life is like this big bubble, and in the bubble are little bubbles: spirituality, financial, work, exercise, whatever, all right? And like the outside bubble is this big, and it doesn't change, ever. The little bubbles inside the big bubble will expand and contract based on what's going on in your life and in your time. The first thing you have to do is give yourself grace. That if one of the bubbles is exploded, kids are sick, my 93-year-old mother needs my help, the bank's got an issue or a problem, the other bubbles are just going to have to contract, and you're not going to be able to do what you need to do around those bubbles. But eventually those bubbles go back to the normal size, and you can then find your equilibrium and your balance. But if you're so focused on that being equal at all times, you're going to drive yourself crazy. And I think the older I get, the more I've been able to give myself the grace around the imbalance, and then try really hard to enjoy the times that I have balance. Because don't we all just forget about those times? When something difficult, when you're faced with a difficult issue or decision, and you look back and said, God, that was Monday. My life on Sunday was so much better. I wish I would have enjoyed it more. But staying grounded in the moments when all things are really good. And people's like, what'd you do this week? And I said, nothing. Yeah. And I so enjoy that nothing sometimes, and kind of revel in it. But the hardest part for me now is that it's, the kids are kind of off on their own, and now I'm trying to figure out what's next for myself. And What is that I want to do? And I've always had emotional help, so I've had a psychiatrist work with us for a number of years. So we started when my daughter had a little anxiety in the 4th grade. She had her person, I had mine. And much to the chagrin of my person, I'm still hanging on to her. I'll call her. I think I need you now. Because I think, people say, oh, you're a leader and you're a bank president and you should be able to deal with all that stuff on your own. Well, the fact of the matter is I can't. Yeah. And they get trained to go do what they do. When people say to me, I've got this financial stuff figured out, I said, well, you run the chamber. I mean, I do that for a living. Why don't you just let me help? Now, I'm supposed to, do that. Not you make your own decisions. But I just think sometimes we think that we have to be the smartest people in the room because somebody believes that we do. But there are always people that are willing to help. And if you're willing to ask for the help, you can get it. But I'm going through that now. Like, okay, what do I do with myself now? Because I have, the commitments that you had when the kids were little. I read your article about, God, running home to try and get baths and dinner and homework so then you can run back to do the evening news. And then when your anchors changed, you did the same thing. I mean, you look back on that now, and do you think that's crazy? Like, how the hell did you do that?
Yeah, I do. I mean, but I think you're right. We all go through these periods where, and you never feel like you're getting it right. That's my problem. I never feel like I got it right. No matter what I get done, it's never enough, which is why I'm still working my age, I guess. And I'm not paying any attention to time. Do we have a question from you guys today? A designated questioner? I have no idea what time it is.
I thought we were here until lunch.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess.
Is the traffic still bad?
Here,
we might
we
as well
do
stay
have a
here.
question.
You're stuck with me again
I guess
this time.
I missed rehearsal again.
I'm Julianne Hobaugh. I'm the managing editor of Columbus CEO. Great to be here again, and how fun and what an honor to share the stage with these two amazing women, each of whom happen to be profiled in our last 2 issues of CEO. Francie, you talked a bit about technology, how it's changed banking. Tell us about how technology has impacted your branches. Are branches in the future going to continue to be important as they have been? What's the evolution going to look like there for Fifth Third in its physical spaces?
Yeah. Well, thanks. So this is I'm beginning my 38th year at the bank, and I started on the consumer side of the business. So of course, I still know everything about branches and everything that needs to be branch-driven. And when I started in banking, they kept saying cashless society. We're not going to have cash. It's going to go away. Marilyn's laughing. I also heard, well, we won't have branches. I mean, we're just not going to have, they're going to go away. And the point is, yes, we've evolved and we've changed. And I think that technology has allowed us to be a lot more efficient, around, trying to be value added to you versus, here's my laundry list of things I should ask you when you come in. Now the profiles will tell us, if someone that's your age and has your employment status, and here are the things I should be asking you about. So the technology has allowed us to be more conscientious of your time, to be a lot more efficient, and to be able to just anticipate based on the history, of people that look and feel a lot like you and what you do. So I think that's, and we have to have it. I was a little bit of a naysayer, so we have a brand new branch that we've opened up in Hamilton Quarter. And 4 years ago, they put those goggle things on you in one of our management meetings, and they said, this is the branch of the future. I said, well, hell, they're all branches of the future, for Christ's sake. So I'm like, fine. So I looked at this thing, and I was like, that is the dumbest GD thing I've ever seen. Ain't nobody gonna like that branch, I'm telling you that right. Open concept and windows and a coffee bar, and I said, who's gonna wanna come in here and talk about their financial affairs? They're a raving success, by the way. I walked in, I was like, yeah, I knew this was gonna be a good idea. See all this coffee bar? But consumers are evolving and changing, far beyond what I've anticipated them to be, right? And staying a step ahead. But I'm a dinosaur in just believing, and our kids are a hell of a lot different. I mean, it's this, it's that. My 25-year-old went to the Grandview branch and said, Mom, they were very kind. The customer service was very good. I went sure, and I told the manager that. I said, the only reason he did that is because his mom's the bank president. Like, would anybody else pick up on that? But I just can't imagine that a personal relationship around something as important as your financial affairs isn't going to still be relevant, whether you're a consumer, whether you're a business, and and our job is to make sure that we can help you in that regard and meet you wherever and whenever you're available to do that. So maybe that is by phone, maybe that is a technological enhancement, maybe that is something that we, aren't the traditional way of doing that, but I just can't imagine that there isn't going to be the need to continue to do this at some point, especially for businesses and consumers and otherwise.
First time I saw my daughter deposit a check on her phone by taking a picture, I was like, what? You trust that? She said, I always deposit. I don't think she's been in a bank for,
I know.
you don't go in.
People say, isn't that great? I'm like, no, I like to talk to people. I mean, I like to
Well,
get to know
we like to
them.
talk to people too, but I think I'm getting the cue that we're out of time. But I want to thank you for being with us. You were great.
You're very nice.
All right, thank you everybody for joining us today. For those of you that don't know me, Katrina Thompson, I'm at Barnes & Thornburg. We're a full-service law firm with offices all over the U.S., but especially right here in downtown Columbus. Thank you guys so much for your remarks today. I know Francie, particularly inspiring, also a child of an immigrant, so loved your story. And I think for any of us, that message of when you're one of a few, you bear the burden, really resonated, and just want to say thank you for bearing that burden and being such a trailblazer, helping make things better, a Fifth Third better. And not just bigger, right? Now, we're not just eating cheeseburgers to get bigger. The real reason you want to hear from me, though, is I have the list of 10 names who get our Crimson coffee and tea gift cards. So just stop at the registration desk on your way out to claim your prize. Trisha Good, Tom Schmid, Matthew Goldstein, Marilyn Brown, Elizabeth Boyek, Urko Wood, Monica Spencer, Marilyn Brown, Caleb Parker, and Andy Gerd. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. If you want to hear more about upcoming events, go to columbus.org/events, and hope you enjoy the rest of your week. So thank you.